Welcome to Feminine Founder, where we talk all things recruiting, hiring, business, and entrepreneurship. Today, I have Lisa Rangel with me. Lisa is the CEO of Chameleon Resumes. Chameleon Resumes helps with executive resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, and job search consultancies. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, Carolyn.
So I know that we've met previously, and I was able to hear your story a little bit about your former executive recruiter turned
Yes.
entrepreneur and business owner. So I would love our listeners to hear your story.
Well, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. I was an executive recruiter for 13 years and mostly focused on accounting and finance leadership roles at the time, but was promoted through the ranks to oversee some other divisions of discipline during my tenure. And then, in 2009, I found myself laid off, similar to what's happening to a lot of recruiters today. Just kind of caught up in a economic maelstrom where I was laid off as a recruiter, and I was also simultaneously a little burnt out on the profession, and was starting to question what I should do next. And although I did have interviews for recruiting roles, and I actually did land 2 interim, gigs just to kind of keep the lights on, so to speak. I started writing resumes because I was really good at it when I recruited for some reason. And Lord knows in 2009, a lot of people needed it. So I started charging for it and wound up sending an email, to, like 400 of my closest friends in some, very bastardized way of, 10 emails, 10 email addresses per email that I sent, in Outlook, and definitely pre-email marketing days. And I kind of lived off that email for about 7-8 months and realized I can do it as a business. And I started, investing in systems and in people and myself. And I started the business in 2009. And, it's been a good run so far. So I can't complain. My clients are amazing. My team's amazing. I'm blessed every day. And, even the bad days are still good days in my book. So they're really more logistic issues than bad days. And I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. But that's basically it in a nutshell.
2009 was a year. That's actually the exact year I got into recruiting. And I
Well,
thought
God bless you.
that it was going to be everyone would want to talk to me about hiring and recruiting. And I was literally getting cussed out, yelled at every single phone call, calling hiring managers. And I was literally considering, like, what am I doing with my life?
You probably weren't alone that year.
But made one temp placement, and that did it for me. 15 years
That's it. That's it.
So why is a resume so important?
That's a really good question. Over the years, even before I started, formally writing them as a business, the importance, I think, has changed, and I think the importance level has wavered. And I think also even in a given year, the importance of a resume, depending on who you are, what you do, the industry in which you do it, and where you live, and that sort of thing. It also wavers in importance in some level. But I think the resume itself, despite whether it's important or not for a particular person in a particular time period, I think the resume building process is really the most important part of the resume. Because ultimately, whether you need to present yourself on a resume or in a LinkedIn profile or in an executive bio or in an interview answer, I think ultimately you need to have a handle on what is it about you that, one, you want to keep doing. So you have to be self-aware about what you want to keep doing, have the victory stories that outline how well you do that thing you want to keep doing, and then correlate it to the hiring manager, end user, recruiter, whoever you're speaking to about an open role, how the thing you want to keep doing and that you're really good at is what they need based on what they depict as their challenges or opportunities before them and why they're making the hire. So I really think that whatever form the resume manifests as time goes on, right? Because Lord knows they've been saying the resume's dead since, 1999. I think the resume process, the resume building process will never go out of style. And that to me is the most important part of the resume.
Do you think candidates should change their resume based on each position that they're applying to?
I think if they have a bad resume, they have to change their resume for every job that they're applying to. I think if you have a solid foundational resume, what you've done is what you've done, but you might change the title up top and the summary part outlining or cherry picking what is relevant to the target audience and put that up top. But what you've done is what you've done. You can't change the titles of your job. Even if you reorder some of the bullets of an employment section, you still do what you did during that time, and you can't, but if you have a solid foundational document that speaks to what you want to keep doing, if what you're applying to is what you want to keep doing, regardless of what the title is of that job, your resume should still speak to it. You just might make an alteration at the top. Change the title of under your name in the summary section, and maybe change out the achievements and choose these achievements that you've done and you want to keep doing that are relevant to the job that you're going for. And if you have a solid foundational document, that should just take a couple of little tweaks. And you shouldn't have to rewrite your resume every time. If you are rewriting your resume every time, you are either applying too broadly, applying to jobs that aren't right for you, or you just simply have a bad resume, because you really should not have to be doing that.
You just made a really great point about victory stories. And I think that a lot of times when people put resumes together, they just put down their job duties. They don't think about exactly what they've accomplished. So if you could unpack that a little bit further, like what exactly would be a victory story? What kind of win would hiring managers want to see?
Yeah, I'm glad you're highlighting this, because a lot of resumes that I'm sure you see, I know I see, before we get to work on them, they're quite literally, in many cases, almost like a job description with somebody's name on top. It's a list of tasks. It's a list of areas of responsibility. It's a list of duties included, right? And now imagine any job that you would apply for. Let's just pick one. Let's just say director of marketing, right? If you have a director of marketing job description, it has a list of, duties that this person will encompass in the job, that they will do if they're hired into the job, and maybe some desired outcomes, like if it's a decently written job description that you can't take for granted either. But let's just go with that. Well, if everyone submitting to that director of marketing job has a list of the same tasks that they've been doing in a director or a director of marketing job as a lateral, or as a marketing manager, and now they're going for this director role as the step up. If everyone's like, I've done this task, I've done this task, and I've done this task, and you have now 50 of those resumes that have a list of tasks, how is that recruiter supposed to discern how well anybody's doing the job, other than their ability to say that they can cut and paste a job description into a resume, right? But when you say, here's how well I've done this task, right? Here's how I've increased the amount of email addresses we have on our email list, or here's the number of affiliates we've signed on and got this much in revenue by having a new affiliate program, or, here's the branding exercise that warranted in, this many markets, and we were positioned as X in our field, in our niche. When you start depicting how well you did each of those tasks on your resume, now when your resume is up against that other 49 resumes that submitted to the job, while everyone else has tasks listed, you have achievements, and they're going to go, oh, this one actually did the stuff that's listed, and now we know how well they did it, and we know in what context. They do it for a 50-person company or a 5,000-person company. There's no better or worse, but context matters. Giving people context, dollars, people, percentages, that starts to give credence and credibility to you doing the job. And then now they can compare candidates and say, well, this one did an email list of this size and increased it by this much. This one did it in this context. This one did it in this, project scope, which is more relevant to us based on what we need and who's doing it better. But without that list of achievements and context, you basically have a list of tasks that everyone else will have on their resume too. And by the way, if it is a director of marketing role and you just have a list of tasks, you are showing that you're a crappy marketer because you're not selling yourself. So how you look for the job is also how you will typically somebody can say is how you can conduct yourself in the job if you're given the job. So, especially if you're a marketer or you're a salesperson, you better show that you can market or sell yourself with some numbers. If you're a finance person with no numbers or measurement on your resume, well, why are we here? Like you really need to think about demonstrating your craft by how you market yourself on your resume.
I love that you just unpack that further because you are so right. I mean, that is pure gold. If you're a numbers person and you don't have numbers of things that you've done or achieved or saved, what kind of CFO are you?
Well, I always kind of laugh when people say I'm results oriented in the top paragraph, and then they have no achievements listed on their resume. It's a list of tasks. I'm like, that's a fail.
So I'd like to pivot to LinkedIn. Why is having your LinkedIn profile optimized so important?
Well, I guess if you ask 50 people that question, you might get 75 answers. But what we are going to focus on today is, I think over the years, and honestly, my answer to that question has would probably have been different even 10 years ago. I think today it's resume like. The profile, if you're looking for a job, is resume like. It is often the first quote resume a recruiter will see. I think the most recent stat that I've seen is like 98% of recruiters use LinkedIn to recruit, whether they're buying the LinkedIn recruiter license or using Sales Navigator or using it in some free capacity, which I don't even know how you do that anymore, but God bless them, right? Everybody's using LinkedIn in some capacity, or I shouldn't say everybody, a majority of recruiters are doing that. And then even if it's a recruiter not using LinkedIn and say they're doing Boolean search on Google, Bing, any of the other search engines, if you have your profile set to be crawled or found by public search engines, it could just come up as a result if you're properly optimized when people are doing Boolean searches, insight searches on LinkedIn looking for people with certain things, certain numbers, certain phrases. So it's simply a way to be found. And you are hijacking your search efforts by not employing this option, because then you're shutting off one very prolific way to be found and you're only relying on you doing outreach. And I think a successful job search nowadays really is about outreach and being found. And then there's a secondary component to it. I think over the last 3-4 years minimum, people meet you in person. Even if you reach out to somebody, sending them your resume, networking, all the things that we used to do and still should do, but then they pop your name into LinkedIn. What's your first impression? Are you giving off an impression that you are somebody who's contemporary, you have it updated, you look kind of with it? Does it look like you haven't looked at it in 3 years? Is that an okay image you want put forth, that it hasn't been looked at in 3 years? Like some people maybe are so good they don't need it, but unless you're that person, and I'd say the majority of us kind of need some validation that we're with it and contemporary. And then if you're not on it at all, people wonder, like, is this a legit person sometimes? Like, it's gotten to that extreme, right? Like, having a LinkedIn profile in corporate is the equivalent of small businesses now. There was a threshold about 10, 12 years ago where if you didn't have a website as a business, you were almost viewed as not legitimate. And there's that threshold that happened about 10, 12 years ago. I had that instance with my husband. He had a contracting business. I'm like, dude, you need a website. People are going to think you're like fly by night. And so that was about 10, 12 years ago. So, I think LinkedIn profiles in corporate have now hit that threshold at some point in the last 3 to 4 years, that if you don't have one, they wonder about your legitimacy and they wonder if you get it, how things work nowadays. So I just think it supports it when it's done well.
Starts with your profile picture.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people's, even at the C-suite and executive level, that don't have a picture uploaded or have a non-professional picture uploaded. And as a recruiter, I pause sometimes on whether or not their profile and their is legit because of those simple decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but there's definitely, a fake profile problem on LinkedIn. And, having your ID validated, which honestly, I even fought for a little while there because I'm like, I shouldn't have to do that. Having a picture, having some basic stuff filled in, without giving away your identity per se, right? Like, you don't need to put my social security number up there, but I think it contributes to people feeling like you're legitimate. And, unfortunately, that's a thing nowadays. Now, again, if you're in a profession or you're a business owner of some kind where, an online presence is not needed or even frowned upon. I mean, that's a thing in certain industries and certain professions. I mean, then that's fine. Again, take what's relevant to you here in this discussion. And, it's not an absolute for everybody. I mean, I'll be the first to say that. No piece of advice is an absolute for everybody. But, if you're struggling and you're not in a profession or an industry that is frowned upon having this stuff public, then maybe you got to look at it.
It can only help, not hurt. I mean, and you have to have it optimized. You've got to have the professional picture. You've got to have the banner. You've got to, if you're open to work, put the open to work banner up. There's no shame in that.
No. I mean, even the banner behind the picture, I'll tell you, nobody's not going to get hired because they don't have a banner up. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, I mean, does it add to it all? Yes. If you're a graphic artist, that's an awesome way to show your whatever. If you're a CFO and you don't have a banner picture, you're really great at what you do. Nobody's going to care that you don't have a banner picture up. So, I mean, like, these things, like, I know LinkedIn recently did away with the profile picture video. And I'm going to tell you that, like, I'm not even that heartbroken about it. I mean, I did one because I'm like, oh, you're supposed to do one. And then I'm like, nobody's not going to get hired because they don't have profile video, especially at the executive level. I mean, unless you're in communications or in marketing. But, like, that's the thing. Like, this whole thing about it you have to look at what your target wants to see and deliver accordingly. It doesn't mean everything has to be perfect, but at least deliver on the parts that are going to matter. Don't get caught up about all the bells and whistles that don't matter. But having the words optimized under your tagline, your headline, your about section, your employment titles, even that bare basic stuff can make a difference. Having, 14 pieces of work in the, published section of LinkedIn's profile, nobody's going to care. So don't sweat the small stuff, but don't ignore the big stuff. You'll never get it perfect, but at least get the basics.
So, what are some things in addition to optimizing their LinkedIn profile that people can be doing right now in this job searching climate in 2023?
I mean, as simply as I can put it, I would say talk to people. Don't hide behind your computer. Don't wait for recruiters to call. Don't wait for job boards to put up postings. Like, if you want to work in a certain area, go look at go find LinkedIn. We've never had a situation in time where we have more access to more information at our fingertips. If you want to work in a company, go start networking with people, reaching out to them on LinkedIn, commenting on their posts on LinkedIn, see what conferences they're going to, even if you attend virtually, even if you ride the hashtags online and don't go near the conference and just try to network that way. When I looked for a job in college, I had to like go to the career center, pull the binder off the shelf of like the alumni in the area that I wanted to work with, like flip the pages, write all the alumni down, go, write letters. We had computers. We had little Apple, oh my God, the little Macs. We had little Macs, and Right Now was the program. And so I did have a word processor to write like 200 letters. And then I had to print out the letters and mail the letters and address the envelopes and put the stamps on it. And like 2 weeks later, call and go, did you get my letter? If they're wanting to do things like now, I mean, you can literally like scrape data. You can have a spreadsheet populated in like 3.2 minutes, and you can do a merge, and you can send something. Even if you manually email 200, it's still going to take a hell of a lot less time than it took me to do that 220 something years ago. Who am I kidding? 30 something years ago. Anyway, we've never had more access to information and the ability to communicate than ever before. And so when people tell me like, oh, I don't have anybody to call, I don't know what to say, I'm just like, you're just not trying even a little bit. Not even hard enough, like a little bit. Like, so you just have to talk to people. If you're getting frustrated that you're getting too many system responses, then that means you're not talking to people. If you go through computers, you're going to get computer responses. You want to talk to people, you got to reach out to people.
Yeah, I encourage people to use the direct messaging feature on LinkedIn to the companies that they're hiring to directly to the hiring managers, and on top of HR or talent acquisition, because a hiring manager might not get back to you, but at least that you've got a DM from you that you're interested, which stands out further than just, hey, did you get my resume? But you have to say more than, hey, did you get my resume? You have to say, this is why I'm interested.
Exactly.
Here's why I'm qualified. You have to get aggressive. And I feel like a lot of people are not comfortable with that.
No, and you know what? And leverage things. Like leverage corporate alumni relations. If maybe you used to work at the same company, but clearly you don't work there. You never worked there together. You didn't know each other. If you went to the same college, if you went to rival colleges, you can make a joke about, oh, you're from here, I'm from there, but I'm thought I'd reach out. I figured you can be nice to me anyway, like, and make a joke about it. Or like, just if you didn't go to college, maybe you went to the same town. Maybe you have a family member that went to that college, or like. The key is to just look for something in common upon reaching out. Maybe it's somebody put something up on LinkedIn and it resonated with you and you comment about what they published. People always love, fan mail on some level, as long as it's genuine and sincere in the commentary. Just look for leverage to reach out to somebody. There's always people are like, well, I didn't go to college. Well, I didn't work at a big firm. Oh, I didn't. There's always something you don't have, right? But you got to look at what you have. And everybody's got something if you look hard enough and just look at what you have.
So, do you recommend people working with recruiters or job searching on their own?
They can't choose to work with a recruiter, right? A recruiter, you know this better than anybody, has to identify them as a candidate that their client wants to possibly interview. And if that recruiter ultimately places that candidate, the illusion is they found them a job. But the reality is they delivered a product to their company client paying them a fee. Just happens to be that candidate, right? I don't think a candidate can choose to work with a recruiter. The illusion is that they are, but that's not happening. I think, sources of hire studies that I've kind of followed over the years is about 10 to 15% of hires happen through third-party recruiters. 20 to 25% of hires happen through job postings, and 60 to 65% of hires happen through first degree connections, second degree connections, third degree connections, employee referrals, social media connections, personal contacts, right? The 4-letter word of networking, right? And so I think you need to do all of it. I think you need to do all of it. I think any one of those things can lead to a hire, and it's hard to know which one. And if you're going to pick one, I wouldn't pick the one that has the smallest percentage of how hires happen personally. I would pick the biggest one, but I do think you need to do all of it.
That's great advice. So, as we wrap up, how can our listeners find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Lisa Rangel. You can go to chameleonresumes.com for executive and senior level resume writing and job landing consulting advisory services. And joblandingacademy.com is where we have essentially our career school, landing a job school with, resume templates, LinkedIn advice, job landing plans, interview coaching, and salary coaching videos and stuff like that. So we have a whole school we've put together at Job Landing Academy, and any of those 3 areas are a good place to get me.
And I'll tag all of that in the show notes too.
This is great. Thank you so much.